All right. Okay. Let's turn that music, shall we? I'm feeling good. Yes, I'm feeling good. I exercised this morning. This is the Motivator Show, usually alongside Empress Abner should join us shortly. I'm feeling really good. I'm feeling fantastic. I have to say, fantastic. How are you feeling, audience? How are you feeling? Remember, your health is your wealth. Now, before I begin, I did want to give recognition on the pilots on galaxyaffiliate.net to Iron King, who preceded me, and I will be preceded by, of course, Empress Shanice. So anyway, let's get on with this show, the Motivator Show. This is where we translate our words into action, and where, of course, success is ours for the taking. Profound statement, and I know I'm often challenged on the validity of the statement, but I stand by it. Success is what we create, okay? It's what we create. But nevertheless, I'm going to go right into the show, and I'm feeling good. I've got an exciting guest coming up later on, and I know that this will be a bountiful experience for you all. Okay, a bountiful experience. But before I go on, though, I did want to recognize our show of last week, and I hope you will all agree that last week's show was a tremendous experience. Yeah? Those of you like me who grew up in the 60s and 70s as a child, okay, and were heavily influenced by reggae music and particularly the lovers rock style, huh? Oh yeah. I just want to give appreciation to all those who are revitalizing the lovers rock music. You know, that's what I want to do. I want to recognize them all, okay, because it's a tremendous effort. Was a time in which the music was pure. We spoke about love. We spoke about the events of the day. But we spoke about togetherness through our music, you know? It's a powerful tool to communicate with the masses. I want to give appreciation to all those involved in the Reggae Appreciation Societies. Okay? So well done. Well done to you all. Well done to you all. But this time I would go straight now into our health section. Oh, I see we have a call on the line. I've not opened up the calls, and well, let me just making sure. Do I have a call on the line? Mhm. Good idea. Thank you. Very good. Very good. Okay. Okay. Oh, appreciate it. Oh, that's so nice. What a positive way to start a show. Oh, you really? Welcome. Welcome. We need to talk, huh? We need to talk, okay? We need to talk. Brilliant, brilliant. Okay. Ah, I understand. And later on, you'll go out campaigning, I imagine, as well, huh? Okay. I understand you. All righty. And you can also, just so you know, and for yourself and other listeners on terrestrial, that this show has been transmitted live by YouTube as well as Facebook and Mixcloud under the Motivator Show banner. Okay, so that's another way you can listen to the show. Okay, just so you know that. Not a pleasure. That's a pleasure. So I'm going to go into the health messages, and thank you, Madam Mayor, for calling in. Yeah? Thank you very much. I'm going to go into our health section, a really important part of the show. This is a part of the show that's been a consistent feature of these shows ever since I started these shows. Why? Because as an elected official, a councillor, I see the stats, and the stats make for uncomfortable reading, particularly as it pertains to our community. And let's be clear, this is very much an continental African Caribbean community show, but it's open to all, of course. So I specifically am focused on that community, just so it's clear for those of you who are viewing and watching us. But it is relevant to all. Okay, I've seen the stats, and the stats make for uncomfortable reading. Okay, I've seen members of my family and extended family and networks equally affected by these health stats. And the significant proportion of the illnesses and maladies that affect our communities are actually avoidable by taking relatively simple steps, thinking about your health as soon as you wake up. Yeah? Being conscious that you are the best determinant of your broad and general health. In other words, you can sense in yourself how you're feeling. Yeah? And you've got a sense of what you need to do in order to maintain good health. And yes, we have doctors and professionals who are there to treat you. Is it not better? Prevention is better than cure. And I hope that resonates with you all. And I know increasingly it is resonating even with us hard nuts, who are tough and stubborn and don't want to change our lifestyle, no matter what. I get it, I get it, I get it. But unfortunately, the implications for yourself, for your loved ones, for your family, for your friends, your wider networks, is you become an example and others follow. And if those habits are not healthy habits, you're leading people off the cliff. Yeah? You're doing yourself a disservice. So I simply ask people to consider, remember, this is not a command. Okay? Yeah? This is not an instruction. Yeah? This is not an insistence that you do this. It's simply a suggestion based upon common sense advice that a health professional might provide. And we've had a number of health professionals on this show, okay, who provided common sense advice. So we can improve the stats in our favor. So I ask you all, please, to consider the amount of sugar and salt you add to your diet. I know as children, we were given pocket money, and the corner on the line will remember, given pocket money. And what did we do? We went out to buy sweets. Yeah. That's what it was a treat, of course. Yeah. Not realizing we're developing a habit towards sweets. That habit taken into our adulthood. And the reason why it becomes a habit quite so easy, particularly in children, because the chemicals in sucrose, yep, that we take in is very similar to the chemicals and pleasure hormones in our brains, in our bodies. And consequently, it's easy for us to develop a habit or a taste for sugar. Similarly for salt as well, as an enhancer to the flavors of our food. But I can give a likely bet to you that in fact, you know someone either in your family, your immediate networks, who suffer from either diabetes or hypertension or high blood pressure. And most of these conditions are in fact self-inflicted wounds. Excessive consumption of sugar and salt is the bane of our communities. We add sugar to our teas and coffees. We drink far too many of these sweet drinks, eat far too many of these sweet so-called foods, and cakes and so on. Eat far too many of them. And of course, we add salt in the belief it enhances the flavor of foods. What is it doing to us? What are those ingredients doing to us? Okay. It's overwhelming our body's ability to produce insulin in the case of sugar. Yeah. And thereby, we become numb. And thereby, we develop the condition known as diabetes, of which, and I'll invite others to tell me, to suggest otherwise, there isn't actually a cure. And therefore, you are obliged to manage the condition for the rest of your life. And similarly, with hypertension or high blood pressure, hardening of the arteries, the difficulty the heart has to pump blood around your bodies, yeah, raising the blood pressure as a consequence, okay? And all the consequential implication that has for you. Yeah? Diabetes, you might lose a limb. With hypertension, you might have an aneurysm or a burst blood vessel, either in your brain or other parts of your body. Yeah? It is an uncomfortable way to live. And those of you with those conditions will know and are able to testify. And I've spoken to not hundreds, literally thousands of people in the community with those two conditions. But they are avoidable. They are avoidable. I equally ask you to consider the amount of carbohydrates and fats that we ingest. Of course, carbohydrates typically formed and gained from the wheat products. Although some of the root vegetables, such as the yam and potatoes, eating these to excess every day has a harmful impact on our bodies. It's insidious, it's slow, it creeps up on you until, of course, you see members of our community with these bloated shoulders, bloated abdomens, bloated thighs, and of course, bloated buttocks. You know, in some cases, you know, it does seem interesting. Actually, you're setting yourselves up for future illnesses. And clearly the fats primarily derived from animal products, yeah, or some oils that we buy from the shop, particularly these corn and vegetable oils, full of harmful fats. They circulate inside our bodies, yeah. Our bodies accumulates the fat, yep, converts the carbohydrates into sugars, energy, and stores it, yep, and creating a cascade of potential illnesses in our bodies. It's again, it's insidious, it creeps up over time and has an impact on your bodies. I pause there because I want you to sink in. What impact does the fat have on your bodies? Well, come on now. If you're overweight, if you are overweight, if you've got a BMI above 25, I believe, just take your weight and look at your height, and depending upon your gender, Google it. Sorry, use a search engine, forgive me. Use a search engine. And that will give you the information you need. I'm not going to tell you here. I want you to take responsibility. Do your research. And if you're above the average BMI for a woman or for a man, if you're above the weight for a woman or for a man, I ask you to do something about it. Please, for the community's sake, do something about it. Okay. Excessive consumption of carbohydrates and fat is a bane in our community. Okay. You know better. I know the vast majority of you know better. but it's feeling the will to do something about it. I always say to people at this point, please speak to your doctor, your GP, or your nutritional pharmacist, or whoever has access to your medical records. He or she is best placed to provide the specific and professional advice specific to you. I am only providing the general guidance, which is the general rule for all. And lastly, I also ask you to consider the amount of starch that you consume. Mhm. Another one of these insidious ingredients in our foods. Okay. Starch, particularly from the rice. Yes, I can hear the West Africans shouting now, oh, jollof, jollof, oh, voila. I hear you, I hear you. I'm from the Caribbean. We have rice and peas in Jamaica and numerous rice-based meals. Numerous. We eat rice in excess. Starch is a principal ingredient, constituent of the rice. And of course, we convert that to energy and store in our bodies. So the effect is cumulative over time. I just ask you to consider the quantum, the amount you're consuming. We were told by a nutritional pharmacist a few months ago here on this show that we should not be consuming no more than a fistful of food per sitting. A fistful. And yes, I consume far more than that per sitting, but I'm gradually reducing the amount I eat per sitting. Gradual. I'm not going for this cold turkey. This gradual reduction. As I did with sugar, I no longer buy a packet of sugar from the grocery store. I no longer buy packets of salt from the grocery store. And I most certainly have reduced the amount of carbohydrates and fat that I consume. A gradual reduction. Because these are simply habits. We didn't know any better when we were younger. But all the health professionals recommend, of course, the following. They recommend that we consume far more fruits and vegetables, particularly green vegetables, but nevertheless a broad range of vegetables. Okay? They're full of nutrients, full of all the needs of our bodies. Yeah? Fruits and vegetables. They positively encourage us to eat far more fruits and vegetables, particularly the green vegetables. Okay? They positively encourage us to drink appropriate amount of water. I'm told between 2 to 3 liters per day. It might vary depending upon your height and your mass. Speak to the health professionals. They'll give you the advice which is relevant to yourself. Okay, I have my water handy here. Okay, and I most certainly do my between 2 to 3 liters per day. Okay, it's helped for you to cleanse your bodies. Yeah, extract your body can take care of itself. Get rid of all the waste that's accumulates in your bodies. Vitally important. Vitally important. Equally, as you're eating appropriately, you must exercise. Exercise is absolutely critically important. It's important to exercise. Before these shows, I exercise. The pleasure is beyond, I can tell you. I come here and I feel so alive because I've exercised before starting my day. Okay. And yes, I get up around 5 to 6 o'clock in the morning. Okay. My mind is trained to this, to give myself enough time to exercise. I cannot commend exercise with sufficient force to you. You've got to exercise. Even if you spend 30 minutes of brisk walk, yep, just so you race your heart, a brisk walk. Yep, that's what is recommended. If you're able to go to a gym, and you're able to afford a personal trainer, please do so. Or you could go online and observe a number of these gym and keep fit courses. Okay, but I recommend exercise to you all. Okay, you'll feel so much better afterwards, so much vitally better afterwards, and you'll help to boost your immune response and your general mental attitude. It's also recommended, not only should you drink the appropriate amount of water and exercise, that you should also give yourself time to, just settle. I recommend myself the meditation. Yep. 20, 30 minutes per day in calm meditation. We push away all the worries and cares of the world and you just settle. Allow your mind to settle, to center yourself. I really recommend meditation, but equally recommend, of course, drinking the appropriate amount of water, between 2 to 3 liters, depending upon your size or mass. Exercise is absolutely vital, and meditation. And thereby you take care of your mental and indeed spiritual health. And this holistic approach to yourself, not only are you loving yourself, but you're loving all those around you, because they will benefit from your example. It is a vital message for our community, an absolutely vital message. I cannot commend this piece of our show to you enough. It is vitally important. I'm honored and my heart is warmed by the number of very positive responses I've had over the past 2 to 3 years that I've been doing these shows in respect of our health messages. It's really to remind people, really reminding people that to drink the appropriate amount of water, for example, to exercise. Yes, I've got my weights here. I love my weights, and doing this for at least 30 minutes a day, all arms running. It's a vital part of who we are as human beings. Yeah, it is a vital part of who we are as human beings. But not to do so is simply, these are self-inflicted wounds. If you have diabetes, my condolences. I understand. I have friends and loved ones with that condition. Okay. Encourage others to think about the amount of sugar and other ingredients they had to their food. Okay. Have them consider the amount of water, the amount of exercise. It's vitally important that these messages resonate both with you, your loved ones, your friends, those in your networks, those who you respect. Pass the message on. We can take care of ourselves. Reparations begins with self. You've got any further comments? I'd love to hear from you. You can communicate with the studio via our YouTube or Facebook pages. You can send a written message in. I welcome your written messages. Yeah, but it's vitally important that this part of the show is not, in your mind and indeed other people's mind, it should go heeded. If it is unheeded, then we set ourselves up for failure. And I have no axe to grind here. I'm not enriched if you're healthier. I'm not enriched. I'm simply happier if you are. I'm simply happier. I hope that doesn't make me feel, you don't feel I'm in any way diminished by that. I'm simply happier if you are healthier. Hope that makes sense to you. I'm happier if you are healthier. I have children, nieces and nephews, who may meet your children, nieces and nephews, your cousins. Okay? And we hope they are healthy, happy unions and live long, fruitful lives. I hope that makes sense to you all. I hope that makes sense, because obviously, I know for some people it is a challenge, but it makes perfect sense to me. It's a public duty. It is a public duty. I hope those messages receive you well. And if you've got any queries, please go to our Facebook or YouTube channel, and you can send a message to the studio via the messenger. I welcome any messages you might have, okay, on that subject. And for another 3 minutes, I'll even open the lines if you want to make any comments in respect of our health messages, because clearly this is vital to us, to our broad and long-term health. And if you just want to talk about health messages, but for a few minutes, the number to call the studio, it's 0208 133 5616. If you wish to call the studio specifically in relation to health messages, it's 0208 133 5616. And if you're overseas, of course, you simply remove the first zero and it's +44 followed by the 208. Okay, so I don't mind hearing from you. Affirmations are great. Oh, I've got a text here, of course. Affirmation are great. Of course, despite the fact I said come in via the messenger, I receive a text on my personal line, of course, as is usually the way. Oh, thank you. This is Stephen. And Stephen says that he has exercised this morning and he's feeling great. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Stephen. Affirmation, affirmation. And we are able to do for selves. Okay? And we are spreading the energy, the positive energy around the community so you can and you will do for yourselves. Thank you, Stephen. Affirmation. Thank you for so much. Thank you so much. What I want to do now, I want to spend, before we've got a few minutes before our guests arrive, I just want to take up the issue which is very much in the news. And that's what happened, as you will be aware, of one of our children that was viciously attacked by, I can only describe as being a racially aggravated attack. A racially aggravated attack that was observed by the head teacher of the child's school. The head teacher of the school observed, did not intervene until one of our children had been cut and bruised and traumatized by the experience. A head teacher observed. I'm formerly a chair of governors, governor for more than 27 years. I have to tell you that if I were the head teacher, forgive me, the chair of governors of that school, I have no hesitation in telling you, if that is what had been reported, and I've got the evidence to substantiate the report, that I would have called for that head teacher's immediate resignation. I have no hesitation in saying that to you and to the world. Okay? All schools have a behavior policy which must be upheld by the students, family, and of course the school. And for the leader of that school to betray the trust that parents place in the leader, the head teacher, is beyond any professional guideline. I say that deliberately using somewhat mild language, but in these instances, not dissimilar to some parts of the police services, often good teachers try to protect the bad teachers in order to protect the reputation of the profession. Happens in policing every day, which is why we lost forgive me, I say lost, the last commissioner in London was sacked by the mayor, and quite rightly so. I am astonished that the head teacher has not yet resigned or indeed been formally sacked. I trust that the NEA and indeed Ofsted will investigate. Institute of School Standards and other institutes will look very closely at this school, okay? Because there are numerous professional issues that arise from this instance. I am heartened by the response to the community. I've seen the petition on change.org, which I've signed, okay, and I wish to encourage you to sign. And if I had thought about this, I would have put it on the screen. But there is a petition that is currently being signed, and I believe it's rapidly approaching 100,000 people who have signed it. Rapidly approaching. And if there's anyone out there who is involved in the petition, and I know a number of you sent the petition links to me previously, I don't mind if you wish to call in, okay, either during the interview or after, but preferably during the interview, because this is an issue that we will discuss, and we must not allow teacher professionals not to honour their professions. We must not allow this. They must not allow bad behaviour in or around schools. They must not allow poor teaching. Yeah. They should enhance the teaching and learning experience for our sons and daughters. And failure to do so should subject such professionals to the most intense scrutiny. And the school in question is being subjected to intense scrutiny. I'm pleased that the police have arrested, and I understand formally charged, a number of persons, both young and old. I note that the head teacher has not yet been charged. But I take this view. The head teacher has enormous powers, both as sanctions and influence. For a head teacher to observe what's happening without intervention, it is safe to say that head teacher colluded, aided and abetted the incidents. And it's for these reasons, if I were chair of governors, I would be demanding, in fact, I would suspend the head teacher pending an investigation. So I ask all of you, particularly those who have not yet signed the petition, and hopefully someone will call in with details of the petition, okay? I urge you to sign the petition, seeking the immediate sacking of the head teacher. And most certainly, it's important for us to insist that the police takes this incident very seriously. The entire community is observing. This is not acceptable. All righty. I want to say that, and I know this issue will be brought up with my guest later on, and I trust that you all, when the time comes, will want to discuss it, and I completely understand. But I just want to emphasize that the change will only happen when good people stand up, listen, and voice their opinion. Okay? Change only happens when good people stand up and voice their opinions. And where it is necessary to insert yourself as part of the process of renewal or change. We are the change makers. We cannot rely upon others to do it for us. We have to take responsibility. Which is why I'm so pleased that the Mayor of Merton's called in. She's taken responsibility for her community. It's affirmation that if we take responsibility for our communities, and I don't mean just the African Caribbean communities, I mean all communities, our viewpoint, our worldview will be inserted in the decision-making processes. deciding what happens in the case of this instance will be heavily influenced by our actions, indeed other concerned communities' actions. I hope that makes sense to you all. It is vital. It is absolutely vital. There's no saying that you should not simply walk on by. You should not simply walk on by. And in this instance, we cannot simply walk on by. You must, I urge you to express your views by signing the petition. Okay. Don't get angry, get smart. I'm going to say it again. Don't get angry, get smart. Work together, yeah? Overcoming the petty personality difficulties, yeah? Work together with common aim, common purpose. This includes all communities who are concerned that these instances have been happening. Common aim, common purpose. Work together is an empowerment exercise, an empowerment experience. And you'd be surprised how much you all have in common. Okay, you'll be surprised. So, anyway, I'll pause there on that particular subject. It will be returned to later on, but it was just necessary to mention it. And if there are members of the community who wish to communicate with me via the chat, or indeed via the messenger, or indeed call in, I'm happy to take calls on that particular subject, because it's one that is definitely one we must discuss. We must not be silent on this one. Okay, well done. But yes. Thank you so much. I agree with you so much, because we are the people who know about our body. When we go to the doctor and we say to the doctor, we have a pain, we don't go there to listen to what we're saying. And I think that what we think, that we are the people who know about our body. Yes. We need to take responsibility. Yes. I think what you said is so right, so correct. But if we don't take responsibility, who's going to do that? That's right. Also, from a very early age, we need to encourage our children and grandchildren to take responsibility of their own body. You know, I was brought up in Jamaica, St. Thomas, and a very hard time. Where you come from? Where you come from? St. Thomas? Yeah. Which part of St. Thomas? I was born in a village called Thornton. Gosh. Right. Okay. Not far from me. But anyway, go on, continue. I interjected. Yes, very dangerous. And she went home and she got some really, I can't remember the names, and she put some ashes or something on it and brought it around my face. Okay. And piece of the day on the inside. Yes. But I tell you what, everything went. There's no scar on my face, nothing on the inside, you know. And I'm a healthy woman. I'm 68 and I've never been in my hospital away from another. Well done. Yes, yes. Right. You know, exercise is important, and I think it's so important that people, you know, mothers, fathers, children, everybody take up a part of sport. If you need to walk, the reason being, it clears your mind. That's right. It makes you become strong. That's right. And also, it's good for your health. Yes. You know, but these are the things we consider that. You know, you and I coming from, you know, where we come from. Talking about young people. Yes. Get involved. But, you know, I don't know what's happening. Thank you. Those are powerful words. Affirmation. That we have it within our gift to live a long, healthy life. We have to make that decision. We want to live a long, healthy life. I'm so pleased, Councillor. Thank you. Thank you for calling in. And thank you for listening. That was a powerful testimony. Powerful testimony. And I will call you now that I know where you come from. My gosh, we are neighbours. Oh, okay. Oh my gosh. I now remember. Thank you. Oh, I'll call you later. I will call you later. Thank you. Oh, I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. God bless you indeed. God bless you indeed. Oh, wonderful, huh? That's a woman of my heart. Oh, now I remember, now I recall. You have to forgive me. I meet thousands of people in any one year, and indeed, my guests, I suspect, will meet even greater number than I. You know, and it is really interesting to speak with our guests very shortly. Really to understand the life and the times. You know, but. Let's go back to that to the caller. Absolutely, I'm going to speak to her later on. We need to talk. Being in public life can sometimes be thankless, but often it's extremely rewarding. I have to say. Okay. And this video will provide an introduction for my guest. Okay. My guest is the most impressive personality, okay, who have had the pleasure to conduct really intense research. And I have to say, wow, truly impressive. And as I continue to do these shows, I am so empowered, absolutely empowered by the persons that make up our community. Okay? Ours is a truly diverse community, many languages, many cultures, but there is mutual respect, and that's what it is. I have to say, to be an African, whether you're born on the continent or in the diaspora, it is truly an honor, truly an honor. But before I go on, with no further ado, I want to just play this recording, and this recording will set the scene for my guest. If you bear with me for a moment, I will set it up, and hopefully shortly we'll be joined by my colleague, Empress Abner. Let me get this set up and make sure it works all right. Here we go.
My name is Miatta Fahnbulleh. I'm an economist. Every day I fight to change the way our economy works. I've seen up close the power of Labour governments to change and to do the impossible. When the global financial crisis hit in 2008, I was working in the strategy unit for Gordon Brown's Number 10. I saw that with focus and political will, our government could move mountains. And it was in those months that I first understood that the change my parents taught us was necessary, might actually be possible. My parents came to London as refugees when I was 5 and became part of the Sierra Leonean community here. They made impossible sacrifices to give my brothers and I the best start they could. I've been lucky, but for so many of the kids I grew up with, good kids from good families who were as likely to go to university as prison, the system let them down. My parents made sure we knew that this system that holds people down is wrong, that it deprives our communities of hope and ambition, and that we had a duty to change it. But I also grew up seeing the value of solidarity. When things got tough, people in our community banded together and helped each other out. And that's why I'm Labour. Because we know that it's not okay for just a few to do it right. We have to help everyone rise. The NHS, the minimum wage, we have always been the party of big ideas to lift everyone up. And now we need to do it again. I've listened to people from across Fahnbulleh and Peckham. They're worried about the cost of living, the lack of homes they can afford. They feel that our schools and hospitals are at breaking point. They want change. Harriet Harman blazed a trail for women. Standing on her shoulders, I want to be Campbell and Peckham's next MP, so that I can bring big ideas to Labour to make this change a reality and move mountains for this community. I've spent the last 5 years leading a charity that develops ideas that could transform our country. Free childcare for all, a living income so everyone can live well, a Green New Deal. Ideas I will always fight for, because I know who I am fighting for. I'm fighting for the kids that don't get a shot, for the parents who are making impossible sacrifices, for the people who are struggling to get by, the people who are Campbell and Peckham. I want to use my voice on the national stage as your voice, to make your fight my fight, so that together we rise.
Well, well, well. Together we rise. Oh, what a way to introduce my guest. I've got to bring my guest into the studio. Let's see if the technology works for us. Here we go. Let's bring her in. Oh, it worked. There you are.
Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Miatta Fahnbulleh. How are you? How are you?
I'm good. I'm very good. Really,
Oh,
really, really delighted to be here.
oh, and I have to say, at least your sound and visuals worked well this week. But last week didn't work so well, but you've got it sorted. Well done. Well done. I've got to say, you look a picture of success, if I may say so.
Oh, thank you.
And
Trying to
I,
juggle it all, trying to balance it all. You'll hear footsteps. That's the children in the background.
I love hearing from children. You know, I'd love to hear from my husband as well, but I love hearing from children because it means you are a real person. You know, you're not over there. You're just a real person. That's what we need: real people to enter public life, but certainly to enter politics. Okay. Now, I will be joined by my co-presenter who's having some problem. She also has children as well, okay, which is so I completely understand. So I'm going to go straight into this, okay, because I'm going to introduce this. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself in a moment, but here it is. We're really pleased that you've agreed to join us today, but we don't know much about your early life, where you were born, Liberia, and your experiences here in Britain in your early life. Just tell us a little bit about yourself. We just get to know you. And
Yeah.
you, of course, and just to be quite clear for the audience, that Miatta was recently selected to be the prospective parliamentary candidate for the Camberwell and Peckham constituency here in central London. It's constituency that was led by Harriet Harman. Yeah, a firebrand. You won't mind me saying that. A firebrand for women's representation in public life, and most certainly in politics. Okay, and we've been honoured to have had her for a good few decades. I would like to say more than 30 years. Okay, and as a result, she's increased the majority in the Camberwell and Peckham constituency most general elections. And last time, it was an outstanding figures. So I'm just go back to you, Miatta, because you are the successor. You know, you've got the mantle to take on. So just tell us a little about yourself, your early life in Liberia, Sierra Leone, and today here in Britain. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm half Sierra Leonean and half Liberian. My mom is Sierra Leonean, my dad is Liberia. And I was born in Liberia. I've got two brothers, a younger one who was born in Sierra Leone, an older one who unfortunately passed away from leukemia in his teenage years. But you know, my parents always thought we would grow up in West Africa, in Liberia or Sierra Leone. That's where we were always going to have our roots and grow. I came from a political family. My dad was involved in politics, my granddad before him in politics. And, you will all know that politics in West Africa is difficult and it's challenging. And so I was born just before, at the time of the coup in Liberia, which was a pretty turbulent time for the country in what became a long, long period that was turbulent. And tragically, we had to leave. We had to leave quite quickly. My father was pretty vocal against the government at the time. And so we moved over to Sierra Leone, where they hoped we would be safe, and we weren't. So we had to flee West Africa and settle here. I came here when I was about 7. We all came. We settled in North London, and if there are sort of Sierra Leoneans here, you'll know that there is a kind of Sierra Leonean community in North London. There's a huge Sierra Leonean community in Camberwell and Peckham, and so it's part of the privilege of representing the community I am is that growing up Camberwell, Peckham, that's where the community was based. That's where we went to buy food. That's where we went to do community events. And I think for me, my childhood was pretty instructive. We had to come here as refugees and had to try and make a life for ourselves, like so many first generation immigrants. And I think what I saw was, community across community, working hard, contributing, doing everything they could. My parents' one thing was, we will come, we will make a life for ourselves, but we just want our kids to be a success. We want them to do better than we were able to do. And they threw everything in that. They made every sacrifices that, I think now and I think about my kids and, I'm lucky enough they did that so that I don't now need to do it for my children. And I saw that across our community. And I also saw huge amounts of struggle, huge amounts of poverty, despite the fact that people were doing everything right. And I think that was very instrumental for me because I think it showed me that there was something wrong with how our economy works. There was something wrong with you can throw so much and not necessarily get what you deserve, despite doing everything right. And that has stuck with me, and that has definitely shaped my politics. I was lucky enough to go to a school that I did well. My parents made quite a lot of sacrifices to make sure that was the case. And, I knew very much that whatever I did, I wanted to try and make a bit of a contribution. I was lucky enough to go and do my first degree in Oxford, which was a huge thing for our community.
Yes.
And then
Well done, if I may say so. Well done, if I may say so. Well done.
Yes, yeah, and it was, and I think every step of the journey for me has always baked in, and this is in part what my parents taught me. It's not enough for you to do okay. You've got to make your contribution. If you are a success, if you're lucky enough to go to Oxford, you've got to plow that back to make a contribution so that you can build a ladder for other people in the community. And that has always stuck with me. And I think that is the thing that shaped my politics. That's the thing that shaped my pathway.
If I may, and first of all, I just want to welcome my co-presenter. As I said, she has children herself, and I know that she has been very much engaged. You want to introduce yourself, Empress Abner?
Good morning, everyone. Apologies for that. My son was coughing last night, so that's why I got up quite late. He's with me this weekend, so yeah, it's half term.
There you are, yes. See, I like real people, I love the children being around. I hope they make noise in the background. I want this to be a family-centered show at all times, Children are an incredibly important part of who we are as adults. So don't you worry, Miatta, don't you worry, Empress Abner. Let the children make those noises in the background. Let's be family-centered.
He knows he's a Ghanaian child. Be seen, but not be heard. He's a Ghanaian child.
We don't mind, honestly, we do not mind. Anyway, Miatta, let me come back to you. First of all, the question, thank you for that initial outline, and you've given us a flavour of who you are. So my question is, as a follow-through on this, of course, you of course have had some measure of success. Okay? Is your success unusual? Do you have a particular drive, or is this something about Britain that allows you to gain the success you've had thus far? What's so different here? Tell us.
So it's interesting. I've reflected on that. You know, when you're on a pathway, you don't necessarily create the space to kind of reflect on successes or not. You know, the thing my parents said to me when we were pretty young was, don't let anyone tell you that you can't do things.
Indeed.
And I sort of, you know, you often look back, you know, and I remember even at school, little things, you know, the teacher saying, I remember at one point I was trying to think about, you know, what I would do for A-levels. And, you know, my teacher said to me, oh, well, look, I don't think you can make the grades for that. I don't think you should do it. And there was always something in me that just wanted to prove them wrong. And maybe that is the drive, you know. And I remember when I, you know, said, oh, you know, I want to look at Oxford. They were like, oh, I don't. And I was just like, you know what, I'm going to do it anyway, irrespective of the fact. And so there is something in me that has been programmed to say, when people hold you back and hold you down, because they will, and often that's as much to do with bias and what they see and perceive than your capabilities. Don't let that be the thing that defines me. It defines you, defines me. So that's definitely something that is there. I think I've also been lucky, and by that I mean, you know, the pathway that I've taken is not necessarily the pathway that I believed I was going to take. You know, I was really clear growing up and actually in university that I wanted to go into international development, and that's in part because I grew up understanding the struggles back home in West Africa. I grew up seeing, yes, poverty and deprivation here, but also huge amounts of wealth, and compared it to back home. And I thought that was my pathway. I thought that's where I would end up. And that isn't where I've ended up. And that's in part because, you know, there is luck, there is sort of spotting opportunities and being willing to take a punt and being willing to put yourself forward for that, and not holding back. And I think that for me is the thing, you know. Reflecting on Britain today, yes, of course, there are pathways to success. And, you know, there are so many people from a more diverse range of backgrounds that are punching above that glass ceiling. But to pretend that there isn't a glass ceiling would be wrong. It is still there. And the reason I know it's there is because there are so many talented people. And if I think about, you know, the group of kids that I grew up with, the kids that were on my street in my neighborhood, and we were all talented in our different ways. And I've been lucky that I've ended up where I have. You know, I have, you know, kids that were as talented as me that ended up in prison, and that were from good families. And yes, there is individual responsibility in some of this, but there are also structural and societal challenges that means that not everyone who has the potential to succeed in the ways that they should are able to. And for me, that is fundamentally wrong. And that has to be the thing that we try and change.
Beautifully said. Now, I've heard you say make very similar statements in other places. So you're very honest. You know, you're not sugarcoating it. You're just saying as it is, and it's absolutely right. Great Britain PLC is hemorrhaging talent from within our community, hemorrhaging talent. And it therefore is undermining our economic prospects as a result. Okay? And sooner the wider community understands this, the sooner we will see genuine growth that is sustainable into the future. Okay, but let me not go on, because, you know, I'm being a local politician myself, you know, I can discuss these matters at length. I'm going to go to my co-presenter, Empress Abner. You got the second question for her. What should be your second question? Oh, I'm sorry. Let me adjust you. Go again. Again, go ahead.
I'm still on mute.
You're not on mute now. There you are.
Okay. Is it important for women to be part of the discussion about the issues such as the cost of living crisis?
Really good question. 100%. 100% for two reasons. In the end, you know, if you look at the stats, a big, partly because of, you know, where women are in our society and the struggle for gender inequality, women tend to be disproportionately impacted. So you've got to guess.
Absolutely fine.
Okay, you want to go and show Daddy? Mummy's just finishing this. Good girl.
Oh, wonderful.
Where's the door?
She's a real person, audience. She's a real person. She's real.
Yes, exactly.
Good, good.
Exactly. But you know, women are disproportionately impacted. In the household, women will be at the coalface of the cost of living crisis because they are thinking about how they manage the household budget. They are thinking about how they put food on the table. So for me, it's really important that they're part of the discussion. But also, you know, I'm a firm believer that to come up with solutions that generally work for people, you need people who are living and breathing the thing that you're trying to change to be part of that conversation. You know, it's interesting. I've worked in policy for coming on for 15 years. And too often we make policy with good intent, but we don't talk to the people that we want this policy to impact on. And until they have a seat around the table saying, this is what I need, and this is what good looks like for me, we will always fall short. So for me, it's twofold. Absolutely, they need to be part of the conversation because they are at the front face of this horrendous squeeze that we're seeing at the moment. But if we want to get the answers right, we've got to involve them in the conversation.
If I may ask a follow-up on that, and it is, you're obviously 100% correct, of course. It's how to do it. Mm-hmm. Do you believe that yourself as being the prospective parliamentary candidate for the Peckham constituency, I'm so pleased to say that, and I'll be able to vote for you, see, anyway, you will be making a difference, but certainly from women from the African diaspora, continental African, what difference do you believe you could make to their lives as being their local MP?
Yeah, so I would say three things. You know, I want and I intend to be an MP if I'm lucky enough to become one that is rooted, that is listening. And so for me, the first thing is giving voice and expression, sitting and understanding and being able to lend my voice in order to articulate the things that people are seeing and feeling and the things that they want change. I think that's the first thing. I think the second.
Forgive me for interrupting, but I'm really keen in specifically women of colour, if you like. Yeah. This is the very large portion of our community we don't hear enough of. Okay? Yeah. And I'm interested how you're going to engage and ensure their voices are heard.
Yeah, getting out there. So, you know, both in the kind of selection campaign, but now my number one priority is embedding myself in the community, speaking to, you know, the leaders. And there are, you know, often the leaders in the community that are doing it in a kind of quiet way, but speaking to them. And then whether that's in how, you know, whether that's in tenancy associations, whether that's in food banks, whether that's in community groups, whether that's in church, whether that's in the mosque, sitting there with women. And what I hope is, you know, in part because I am a woman of color, in part because the pathway that I have led is a pathway that many are leading, I hope we can build trust. And you've got to start with building trust. You've got to start with being accessible. You've got to start with going and meeting people where they are, not expecting people to rock up to Westminster or whatever to meet me where I am, meeting me where they are, and having that conversation with hopefully a level of understanding that's there anyway, because I understand, I've seen, you know, your story is my story, it's my mom's story. So it's easier to make that connection. But to listen, right? To listen and properly listen and understand and then be able to articulate that. Now, look, that's only the first step. For me, that's only the first step. The second step is, you know, I want to be building a cohort of Black female leaders in our community that I don't have to represent their voice. I can take them to sit and meet ministers when we've got a Labour government. I can take them to give them a seat around the table to say, this is what we see and this is what we need. You know, it's old school community organizing. Yes, you can do representation. Yes, you can be a voice. But the most powerful advocates are those that are advocating for themselves and actually building the power and creating the space for people to do that. And for me, that's not just about setting out the challenges, you know, because we can all say what's wrong. You know, the thing that I've learned is like the solutions. Actually, if you do this, this is the thing that will catalyze things in a different way for my family, my kids, my community. And that is really powerful. And we don't have enough of that in politics. Often the people who are throwing in the solutions are either, you know, policy wonks like myself, or people who are speaking on behalf of the people that ought to have a voice themselves. And we need to create more space for that. And then I think for me, the third bit is we if you want change, we need a far more diverse politics. You know, if we want politics to work for Black women or women of color, we need more Black women and women of color being in politics. And I hope the fact that I have done it and will be reaching out to a generation of young women to say, you can do it as well. This is a pathway that not only is attractive, because at the moment people are like, why would you want to do this? And there is a lot of that, but it can be done.
Yeah.
You know, there's a generation of people who will be our leaders, and at the moment they feel it's locked out for them. And if I can help say there is a pathway and it looks like this, and I will help you, and we can get more of that in our politics at both the local level and the national level, that's how we begin to change things.
Wonderful, beautifully said. Off there, me. We're going to. I look forward to your first speech in Parliament. I really do look forward to it. I'm going to my co-presenter. Your next question, there, Empress. Oh, again, keep going. Yep, go ahead. Yep.
I like the fact that you mentioned solutions, because that's a big thing, that we don't always have solutions. We have ideas, but we don't put the solutions into actions. And I think that's why I do the job that I do. So I think it's really important that we make sure we have more solutions within our community. So thank you for that. My next question is, when you are elected to Parliament, what do you want to achieve in your first 100 days?
Oh, good question.
When you said that.
I'll tell your eyes light up at that point. Come on now. I'm sure you thought about this.
Look, so I think there are two parts to it. There is what I want to try and do as an individual MP. And it's what I then want to try and use the power that I have, because we all have individual power, to ensure that a Labour government does. So if I take both in turn, look, I'm really clear, and you know, I've had the privilege of speaking to a lot of people across Campbell and Peckham. There is still many, many, many thousands more that I want to speak to. But the two issues that are wholly clear to me, that are top priorities, is one, I use the language of living standards, you know, but it's the fact that for so many people, their ability to raise their family without struggling, to stay afloat, and not just to be sort of standing still, but to progress, has gone backwards. It has gone backwards across the piece. There is huge deprivation, but they're just across the piece. Even people that thought they were okay are no longer okay. Particularly in the African community. And at the moment, there are not answers or solutions or responses that are speaking to that. The second is housing. And for me, housing is absolutely fundamental, because if you have a decent home above your head for your family, that's the foundations for everything. And the fact that we are still in a situation where that is locked up for so many people feels fundamentally wrong. You know, you only have to knock on a few doors in the area. Housing is the thing that comes back and forward every single time. So those two issues, and for me, they are, you know, when I was asked the question by Harriet, what's going to be your thing? What's the thing that you're going to campaign for? And I was like, well, it will be living standards. And by that, I mean, how do we ensure that everyone has the fundamental basics so they can get a hot on and thrive? Because at the moment, we don't guarantee that for people. For me, that is about an income that if you're working or if you're not working and you're transitioning either because you have a disability or you're in and out of job, you got enough income so that you are not drowning. Because if you are drowning, it's impossible to bounce up. It is impossible to progress. So that for me is the first thing. But then you kind of combine that with some core things that we all need: decent housing, education, health, care. And you know, my view is if we can achieve that as a foundation for everyone, we're still like, that's your right as a citizen, it would just unlock so much. And at the moment, we're not providing that basic. So I'm really clear that, you know, in 10 years' time, when I look back, I want us to have got that right for this community. So my first 100 days, the two things that I will be fighting and shouting for, and also trying to work locally to try and achieve, and that's partly thinking about things that we can do in the council, but also thinking about where we can lend our voice, is one, immediate support for the cost of living, because it will still be biting, but thinking about things like, you know, raising the national living wage so it reflects the true cost of living. You know, Labour have said that this is something they want to look at. This is something that if I have a seat in Parliament, I will be putting a lot of pressure, I will be campaigning for, I'll be trying to build alliances for. And then I think the second thing is housing. You know, I want us to kick kick off a big housing program, and if I get the chance of having a private member bill, it will be on social housing and how we capitalize that, and working with the council to say, where do we have the levers to do things? Southwark has one of the biggest social house building program in the country, something I'm incredibly proud to now be a part of.
Yes.
But we need more, and the council needs national government to unlock the levers for it to be able to do more. So for me, those are the two key things that I will personally be campaigning for and trying to work both on the ground, but also in Parliament. What I want a Labour government to therefore do my first 100 days, and no one MP can achieve anything, but you can be part of a team. You can work with other backbench MPs to make a case to the front bench. You can try and support the front bench in order to kind of make the case for some of this stuff. And the two things I am desperate to see us achieve in our first 100 days is one, a big devolution settlement that includes powers over housing.
Absolutely, yes.
Compulsory purchase powers, so council can take land in order to build social housing, the ability to raise our own income in order to build the housing that we need. So for me, that's the thing that I want to see first. And then the second thing is I want a proper commitment that we are going to be looking to not just lift wages at the bottom by increasing national living wage, but a proper plan for how we create jobs that create the ability for people to progress. We've got this green prosperity pledge, 28 billion a year that Labour has pledged. That could be catalytic for our community if we can have the grip over the money to use it in our patch in the way that we know can create the sorts of jobs and sorts of opportunities for people. So getting that right, and not just saying, look, we're going to give 28 billion, and by the way, the Treasury is going to decide what schemes and what programs that might touch us, is one pathway. But getting it right, so we say, look, give us the resource, give the council working with the community the resource to do things here that we know will create opportunities that means that people have a shot on the pathway. And that's the sort of thing that I would love a Labour government to do in its first 100 days.
Brilliant. And,
He's going to talk about it all day.
It's not a problem, because of course I recognise why you focus on the big national issues in the first 100 days. Absolutely. And I now bring you locally. Okay? In your first 100 days at a local level, what difference? How will you make your mark?
Yeah, locally? And so for me, it's not even the first 100 days, it's from today. I have the privilege of being selected by a candidate, so I already think the work starts now.
Oh, yes.
And for me, the two things that we are trying to do through the local party at the moment is, on the one hand, look, the next 18 months, if that's where we are until the general election, is going to be brutal. It is already incredibly tough for people, but it's going to be pretty hard. And you only have to talk to a handful of people in our community to kind of get a sense of that. And the thing that I'm really keen for us to try and do, so you're getting the whole family. This is child number 2.
Absolutely fine.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Right, here you go.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So again, people, it's real, It's absolutely fine.
Sorry, that's double trouble.
We like trouble. It's all right. We like trouble.
So it's going to be a really, really tough period. And the thing that I'm trying to do at the moment is build up a team of activists and just go out to the community to say to people, we know you are struggling. How can we help and what do you need? And then using that as a way that we can connect people to the infrastructure that we have, and whether that is some of the support that we're providing through the council on cost of living, whether it's some of our community and voluntary organisations who are doing absolutely heroic work, but to try to knit that together, because at the moment there are lots of people who are drowning and they don't know where to access the support. And I think we just have to try and provide that blanket of protection where we can to help people and support people. And that work starts now. I don't have to wait to become an MP for that to be the case. That starts now. So for me, that's the first thing. And the second thing is on housing, the thing I'm obsessed about. So the two things I'm doing from today is, I've already said to the council, look, if we go out, I know one of the big issues that's going to be coming back is housing, maintenance, the sort of bread and butter stuff. And can we make sure that we're responding to that? But, you know, I now have the sort of privilege of chairing the Southwark Land Commission.
Yes.
And the reason I agreed to do it is because I think, you know, land is catalytic to unlocking social housing. And we've got actually the advantage that in Southwark, not just the council, but Transport for London, some of our NHS trusts, charities, the church have huge amounts of public land that we could use to the benefit of the community. And actually, if we can do a piece of work that says, where is this land? And we can engage the community and say, you know, what would benefit you? How can we use this to your disposal? And start a process where we're thinking about the wins, whether that is more social housing, whether that's about community spaces, whether that's about green spaces, things that work for people now. That's a big win. And then, yes, we build on that when we get into government, because then I can go into Parliament and say, we've already started this. What we need now from national politics is this to enable us to move further. So there's a lot to do, but for me, those are two things. And I don't have to wait to become an MP. I wanted to start doing them now. And I hope by doing them, I prove to people this is the sort of MP I'll be. I will fight for national change, but I will also make sure that I'm here working with you to do the things that we need to do in this patch to support our community and help it build up.
That would be great to know, because especially for my families, I'm a family support worker in 2 schools, and all I ever deal with is housing. And Martin knows that that's all I ever deal with. I come to him for advice, and you know, I think someone needs to come into the community and speak to our parents, because they don't. And the parents feel like they're not getting the support that they need. And I did say to Martin that, you know, I would love for you to come and talk to my parents and understand where they're coming from, because they are the community and they are the local people, and you are part of that community. So it would be really good for you to come and see how they are feeling and the situations that they're going through, because it's very hard. And my biggest issue as well is some of the communities are not together. They're very isolated. And and this is no disrespect, especially the Latin community. They just don't integrate with us, and they only seek support when it's really, they're at the end. And I want them to be part of the community, to come in and see that, you know, we can help and we can work with them. But if they don't reach out to us and they stay within their own community, they're not going to get the support that they want.
What do you think about that, Miatta, in terms of the various communities and how they interact, interface with public officials like ourselves?
Yeah, so I completely agree with that analysis. You know, we often use the language of community to describe a place, but in truth, we are communities within communities. And actually, you know, the beauty and the richness of somewhere like Camberwell and Peckham is that it's really rich communities, you know, where people identify within a community, and there is strength and there is power in that. But those connections across are the things that make us really powerful, you know, where we're thinking about our ability to influence people like Martin or people like myself, you know, and we don't exploit that enough. And it's interesting, you know, the Latin American community, which is, you know, a really big, vibrant community in this patch, and actually, which I haven't, in the process of getting selected, had a chance. And I met some colleagues in the Latin American community that were like, look, we would love for you to come and sit with us, and we'll be a conduit. And it's trying to find those leaders within the community that can open up the space. And then for me, there is always common cause. And there is common cause. And if you can connect people, that's the way in which they can exert the power that they have. Because again, I come back to the one thing I've learned over the course of doing policy and running the organization I do is that we all have power. It's how we use to bring it into collective space and how we look to exert that. And I think there is definitely work to be done. And, you know, it was interesting, you know, when I was sort of talking about the Land Commission, I said to the council, what engagement are we going to do? Because often we talk about community engagement and we're talking to the usual suspects, the people who already have a voice, are already in that space. And you've actually got to work really hard to find the leaders, because there are leaders in all communities that aren't in our space, because they're, you know, they are using their time and their capital to work in their community, to help support their community. You've got to actively reach for them to bring them in this space. And when you do, there is both perspective, but there's also, you know, there is a richness, and there are allies there that can help us do the work that we're trying to do. So, you know, in fairness to I think the council and our councillors and our officers, I think Southwark is at the vanguard. I sometimes work in some authorities and they don't even try to do any community engagement. I think we've got to be better at it, and we've got to make that connections between the communities within our community.
Thank you for that. That's a very useful observation, and you're absolutely right. I'm restraining myself. I want to talk about my portfolio, my job, businesses, and town centres portfolio. I absolutely want to talk about Southwark Labour, but this interview is really about Miatta and Fahnbulleh. Okay,
Yes, please.
So I'm restraining myself. But you mentioned, and you ever so often, the organisation that you work for, the New Economic Foundation. Just tell us about the work at the foundation. And do you feel you are making a difference in that social discourse amongst policymakers, the trade, industry, and so on? Tell us about your work there, please.
Yeah, so the New Economics Foundation, I've been there for about 5.5 years. It's an organisation that's been around for about 30 years, and our mission is really clear. Our analysis is that the economy doesn't work for people, or doesn't work for the majority of people, and it doesn't work for the planet. And what we've always tried to do is come up with big ideas about how would you begin to change the way the economy works, like big structural change that could address both social justice agenda, economic justice agenda, but climate agenda. And then we will often do two things. We will go into, whether it's an estate or in a grassroots organisation or a council or working with mayors, in order to think about how we do things differently. And our kind of theory of change is that if you can ignite change on the ground, if you can get people to see a problem from a different angle, to come up with different solutions, and then you advocate by building coalitions and movements in order to be able to push for that change, that's how we begin to drive structural change at the national level. And it's been an interesting journey for me, because when I started the organisation, the thing I felt was interesting was, if this was back in 2017, and across the political spectrum, for the first time there was consensus that the economy's not working. It was the time of Jeremy Corbyn, and he was saying the economy works for the few, not the many. Theresa May was saying the economy doesn't work for everyone. There was an increasing realization that actually we were getting climate fundamentally wrong, and that we needed to move at pace. And so I said to the organisation, if you like, the arguments that we've been making, and at points we were an outlier in those arguments, are now in the mainstream. What we need is what the solutions look like. How do you get from where we are now to where we need to be? And actually, how do you deal with the fact that we are in a moment of huge rupture and crisis across the piece in order to catalyze the sort of big change that we need to happen? It's interesting. I'm getting to the end of my tenure now, so I'm really reflective on what we've done. And, our strategy was punctuate the national debate. So I spend a lot of time in the media, but I do that prosecuting a very simple argument, and that is about the scale, because sometimes it feels like our discourse, in the national debate seems completely divorced from what we are hearing on the ground through the work that we're doing, and trying to lend a voice to that. We try to kind of build community leaders that we can give a voice to kind of talk about what they're seeing, but then to offer solutions. So we never criticize. We never say there's a cost of living crisis and we stop there. We craft ideas that will deal with it here and now, but in a way that will drive structural change. So if I give you an example, our living income, and that the basic idea there is that you build a floor in social security system, which means that people have enough to deal with the cost of living. It's a really basic idea. At the moment, our social security system is completely arbitrary. It's not based on what people need, and it's hugely punitive. And why that matters is there are a lot of people who can't work because they have a disability, and they are being completely squeezed. And at the same time, if you're out of work, you need a safety net that allows you to bounce back, and you can't do that if you are in a state of crisis. So, that's one of our things. The second thing that we've been doing a huge amount of work on is how do we reverse the decline in social housing, and actually what does a new deal for housing look like, and how would you do this at a scale that got us to the ambition of delivering 3 million social homes over the next 3 years. And then we combine that with two other strands. We see the need for big transition to respond to climate change and the ecological crisis that's happening, we think that the opportunities to do that in a way that not just change the structure of the economy, but actually lifts people up. If you're about to have a massive disruption, why not do that in a way that creates opportunities, creates jobs, creates a better social settlement? And so, the work that we've done around the Green New Deal and what that would look like, I hope, we've seen already we had wins in terms of things that Labour have committed to. We've pushed the government further than they would have done. But for us, we think there is something there that could be the plank of quite an ambitious agenda for a government that wants to take it up. And the final bit for us is about the push down of power. And, how do you do levelling up, Boris Johnson's phrase. But at the heart of that is, in the end, we don't do enough to lift communities that are struggling across the country. And that is as true in London, by the way, as it is in the Northeast. And what are the set of tools that you need to do in a place to create those opportunities? So in my mind, the thing I've been trying to do is develop a prospectus for government. And actually, if you did this stuff, you would deal with problems that are in the here and now, but critically, we would begin to drive the very structure of the way our economy is crafted in a way that starts to work for people and hopefully also responds to the climate crisis.
Wonderfully said, wonderfully said. And I was going to quiz you further on New Economic Foundation, but what I'm going to do first of all, I'm going to go to my co-presenter, who will have the one of the final messages for you. But emphasize that, then I can come back to you, Miatta.
How can the residents give support to you to achieve your goals? How can we, the community, give you the opportunity to reach your goals?
Thank you. An amazing question. I think 3 ways. One, connect. I'm completely sincere and serious about having the conversations with people, meeting people where they are. And, everyone I meet, I'm like, just let's have a conversation, create some spaces. I will come anywhere to talk. So I think that's the first thing, because I think we need a shared understanding about what we're trying to do collectively. I have a project in my head that's born out of the work I've done over the last 10 years, but that project will have to adapt based on what people want. And so let's develop our common project about what we want to achieve over the next 5 to 10 years. I think the second thing I would say, and that is as much about the problems as we see them as the solutions. And then the second thing for me is, the thing I've learned is big change comes when people mobilize. In an ideal world, our politics is benevolent and it gets us to where we want to because we elect the right people and they get us to. But that's not how politics works. And there are always vested interests and it's very complicated. And some of the things, say something like social housing, I'm like, this surely should be at the top of the agenda. This should be the only thing that people are talking about. And yet it's barely mentioned in our politics at the moment. And part of a big barrier is the cost, because you have to subsidize this and we don't have an answer. So we don't talk about it. And actually, the thing that shifts that is if you can mobilize enough people that are willing to raise their voice, that are willing to organize, to apply pressure on politics. And to me as an MP and a politician, but to other politicians. And, one of the beauties of coming into the world that I've done and the job that I've done is that I've begun to understand the power of movements and how you catalyze them. And it's people, that in their view aren't remarkable, but they absolutely are remarkable, that come together and say, enough, we need something better and it looks like this. And we are going to bring our voices together to push for that begins to drive change. Change very rarely comes from the top. It comes from pressure from the bottom, forcing the top to act. And I think my view is, and I use a sort of anecdote, in the pandemic, I looked around, we did a lot of work to change the debate. Everyone was talking about Build Back Better. Everyone was like, this has to be a watershed. This has to be a turning point. And, and I said to the organization, this is the moment. Things are going to change. And our job now is to work with others to say, this is what the change looks like. And I look back now and I'm like, how on earth did we bounce back to the same thing, but worse, after everything we saw and experienced? And so, I'm really clear that we need to mobilize and organize people to shift. And that comes from the ground. And I think the more people that want to get involved with that and want to be part of that movement that says, enough, we need better, and it looks like that. because there are voices shouting that are influencing politicians and government, and it is not the voices of people in our communities and communities across the country. And those voices need to be lifted. And then I think for me, the third is, in the end, I think a politician is only as successful as the people that are willing to be part of a team and are willing to work together. I don't think one person is remarkable on their own. And I think the more people that are wanting to be part of a team that is both about making sure we keep Campbell and Peckham Labour always. But beyond that, across London, connecting to other people so that we're creating momentum around some of the change that we want to see. I hope in 10 years' time, we've had 10 years of a Labour government, and it has been a huge reforming catalytic government. But it won't do that unless there is a groundswell on the ground and teams that can connect to other teams.
A question here. I think this is really an important point. You're absolutely right that it's change will come from the ground upwards. But there are significant portions in the community who feel disempowered.
Yeah.
How are we, you and I are politicians here, but yourself, of course, how are we, with yourself, going to empower those who feel disempowered to express their views to us and to the wider community to make that difference? What should we do differently to engage and to empower, to hear those voices?
Yeah, and that's my sort of third point about the team. So, if I look at the Labour Party, the first thing I'd say to anyone is join the Labour Party. Join the Labour Party, and particularly people from our community, people from the African community. So you take the Labour Party in Campbell and Peckham.
That's right.
And Campbell and Peckham has one of the biggest African populations in the country. We are majority Black and Asian, and yet the Labour Party is predominantly white and predominantly middle class. And that is an asset. That's brilliant. But we need people from our community to come and be part of the team, to get involved, and to make sure that the priorities of the Labour Party locally and then increasingly nationally reflects the priorities of the people in our community. So when I say I want to build a team, I want to build a team that is representative of the community that I represent. And at the moment we have a brilliant team, but that team is not representative of the community we represent. And that's a quid pro quo. That means that I have to reach out. We've got to create spaces that when people walk into the Labour family, they feel like it's a family that is welcoming, that is inclusive, that is listening, but that people feel they've got agency within that we are doing things that people feel, if I give up my time to be part of this, I see the benefits for my family and my community, and I see how my agency has an impact. And that is a bit of work that I want to do with the local party to make it as such. But the thing, to your question, that we need is for people to be willing to be part of this team. Because unless we change the way that we look and feel and our priorities to reflect the community, we will never have the level of representation that means that people who want a voice feel like they have a voice.
Well said. Well said. I suspect my co-presenter might want to say something to this point because she's pretty hot on the subject. Go ahead.
It's very interesting you say that your team doesn't really reflect your community. I just wanted to know why that is, because sometimes when the MPs come to my area and they knock on the door, I know I don't open the door to them, because when I see them and they say we're for Liberal Democrats or Labour, to be honest, I don't open the door for them because I don't feel they actually listen to the community. As a family support worker in the schools, they've got like a Black Parents Forum. They have loads of events to get MPs to down and people to actually meet and connect with the community. Some do come, some don't come. So why do you think we haven't got enough of our community in your team?
So that's a question that I'm trying to get my head around at the moment. And it's two parts, right? Because it's what I've inherited, and it's also what I can build. My aim is, and I've said this to everyone, in 5 years' time, the team feels very different. It looks very different. And that requires me to do some work. That requires me to, I think, be part of the team. And that requires me to, I think, be part of the team. And that requires me to, I think, be part of the team. And that requires me to, I think, be part of the team. And that requires me to, I think, be part of the team. And that requires me to, I think, be part of the team. And that requires me to, I think, be part of the team. And that requires me to, I think, be part of the team. And that requires me to, I think, be part of the team. And that requires me to, I think, be part of the team. And that requires me to, I think, be part of the team. And that requires me to, I think, be part of the team. And that requires me to, I think, be part of the team. And that requires me to, I think, be part of the team. And that requires me to, I think, be part of the team. And that requires me to, I think, be part of the team. And that requires me to, I think, be part of the team. And that requires me to, I think, be part of the team. And that requires me to, I think, be part of the team. And that requires me to, I think, be part of the team. And that requires me to,
go into schools, to go into tenants associations, to go into churches, to go into mosques, and to say, I am here and I need your help. And I need you to work with me so that we can drive the change that we want to see in this community. And when I commit to do something, because we've agreed that these are the things that are priorities, you will see that I am doing that. But it's not just about one person. If we can work together, we will collectively do this. So I think there is just a bit of work going and reaching out. I think many of our councillors are doing that, but we're going to have to create the space to do that more. And, the thing I would say about councillors is that they have an impossible job. Many are doing a day job and they're doing this job, and it's really hard and they're not resourced. And the level of casework, just responding to that, on top of trying to do, if you've got a cabinet portfolio, trying to do that, and then create the space to kind of go everywhere that you need to do that engagement, it's really hard. And we do not resource our councillors with what they need in order to do that job. So that's the first thing I'd say. But there has to be more of an intentional impact to do that. And it's about trust. So you start with little things. And this is why, some of the work that we're trying to do now, whether it's through the Land Commission or whether it's through the community campaigning I want to do, people need to feel that if they've said something, there is a response. You win a bit of trust. I came in, we talked, you said this, we went back, we did this. I'm back here again. Okay. Not just one of these people that rock up, listens, it looks like they're going over their head because they're looking at their time at the next meeting they need to go to. And then I never hear from you again until it's election time and you're knocking on my door again. And I think that's where we build. But it has to be intentional. You've got to want to do this. You've got to have this as a core part of your project. And it is for me for two reasons. Partly because the reason why I was so desperate to represent this community was because it is a majority African community. And of course, I will represent everyone. But there is something about representing my own community and being a voice for that that is really important. And I take that seriously. And therefore, you want that in your team. But then the second thing is, I don't believe that we will achieve the change that we need unless we can organize and mobilize people. And that is hard work. But again, it requires going out there, doing old school organizing, and you build from there.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that response. You're absolutely right. Again, I'm going to resist the urge to contribute to this one because I've been through this experience, as you know. If I may just take you in a completely different direction, okay, outside of Campbell and Peckham, to an issue that's very much in the news, and that's, of course, the attack on one of our children. Very vicious attack. And you may have seen the change.org petition for the head teacher who observed the attack and did not intervene until the latter part of it, to resign or indeed to be sacked. And most certainly, we are pleased that the police have arrested a number of individuals. I wondered if you want to make any comment on that incident and what it might mean both for that part of the country, Ashford, and of course for Britain as a whole.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I saw the video and I wish I hadn't. It's one of those things that you see and you wish you could unsee. And it's quite hard, as a parent, as a Black person, but also as a parent, it's hard not to feel that kind of gut anger, because that's your first reaction, because that could be your kid.
Yep.
And the thing that struck me about it was not just the awful, vicious attack, the fact that there were adults egging on children to do that, 10-year-old, I mean, it's horrific. But the fact that there were people just standing about.
Right. Yep.
And they didn't jump in. That would be my instincts. I would go up.
And I think including the head teacher.
And then right at the end, the teacher saunters in. And he stopped it. As soon as he intervened, he stopped it. So I'm like, why did you not literally sprint across and go in? And there's obviously something about it being quite normalized, I worry. Like, we don't know the facts of it. But I think the two things that are clear is I'm glad that the police are investigating it as a racially aggravated crime, because that's what it looks like. And I think it's important to call it out. I think it says a lot about safeguarding in our schools. And, it's obviously unlocked a big debate where there are now many people coming up and telling stories about racism in our classroom and kids. And in a way that I couldn't believe it. My kids are 8 and 4. And in some respects have been a bit insulated from that, because I think it's much, much worse the older you get in the system. And it terrifies me. And so, fair play. And I'm just really, really grateful to MPs like Janet Davey that have sort of made this a big national issue, because this sort of thing I gather is happening a lot. And it's just been brushed under, and it was only because it was captured on camera, it went viral on social media, and then people lent their voices, that we're now having this debate, that the police are taking it seriously, that the Home Secretary is now having to intervene. But there is something for every parent, doesn't matter the color of your skin, but particularly, Black parents will feel it acutely, that we need to know that our kids are being safeguarded and looked after.
Yes.
And if schools do not believe it is their duty to do that in their school, but even outside their, it's outside of our
school uniform.
It's your problem. They are your pupils. We put them in your care. And so I hope, and again, it's important, and I try, the thing I've learned is in public life, I try to be really measured. I try to sort of look at the facts. I try not to have an emotional response to things and be led by an emotional response. You do have an emotional response, but I tend to take a breath and just, so from a rational and not an emotional, because it's hard to kind of decouple the two, I hope that this shines a spotlight. I hope more people come out and talk about this, if this is happening. And then there needs to be root and branch, systematic across schools response to how we deal with bullying in the round and racism within our schools, rather than ducking it under the carpet. And that will require things that we need to do nationally, and then it will require tough sanctions. If that head teacher gets to get a wrap around the knuckles and that's it, like, that sends a terrible message, because for me, he's failing in one of his core duties.
Absolutely. You make an extremely good point, and I'm a former school governor myself for 27 years, and formerly chair of 2 schools, and founded the local governors forum going back 30 years ago. And clearly, these issues were pertinent then as it is now. I've made it clear on this show that if I were chair of governors of the school in question, this head teacher, at the very minimum at this time, would have been suspended. Okay, you correctly observed the head teacher's intervention brought the matter to a halt immediately. In fact, the head teacher, alongside other adults, the head teacher of the principal guardian for our children in that school, could stand by and watch a horrific, traumatic scene play out. Sends, as you say, the wrong signals to the profession, most certainly the wrong signals to parents and the wider communities. To me, it's wholly and completely unacceptable. So that's as much of my view I'm going to express during your interview, Miatta. But I would say this, as we now approach the end of our conversation, there's a key message you want to communicate to the community, both in Camborne, Peckham and broader field. Any key messages you wish to communicate?
So first, I'm here, and I'm open and accessible, and I want to reach out to as many people as possible. So please get in touch. Let's start a conversation.
How can they contact you?
So you can either contact me on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. So that's Miatta. Just look, there's Miatta Fahnbulleh. You'll either get my auntie or you'll get me. My auntie's a singer. I'm the prospective MP. So get on social media or on info@miattafahnbulleh.org. So those are all channels. Reach out, get in touch. I think the second thing I would say is get involved. We hopefully, if all goes well, are on the cusp of achieving a Labour government. There is a bit of a fight that we need to do that, and I think no one takes that for granted. So we need to make sure that we have that change. But then we need that Labour government to work for this community, and that requires more people in our community being involved in the Labour Party at all levels. And in the end, I think we're on the cusp of quite profound change only because of events, because of the reality of what's out there. And I think people in our community need to be heard and need to have a seat round the table to make sure that when we react and respond to the things that we're going to have to, that is done with a sight of how it will impact on our communities and that it works in the advantage of our communities. And that will only happen if people are up for getting involved. So for me, those are the two messages. And I'm really optimistic. It's hard to be optimistic when things feel so dire, but in part because it feels like we're in such a tipping point because things have gone backwards so much. There is so much that is now broken that to rebuild will require big, big change and reform. And I believe that's what a Labour government will do. Whether we want to or not, I think that's what we're going to do. And therefore, there is a huge opportunity to influence and apply pressure to that Labour government so it's acting in the interest of our community. But that requires people to get engaged and to be part of that team. And I think that's my big second message.
Wonderful, wonderfully said. And we love your children, if I may say so.
You got the full brunt of them in the background.
It was absolutely wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And you've been a wonderful guest today. Don't be a stranger. Our doors are always open to you. I hope that I'll leave my co-presenter to be a judge, because you can tell that she didn't open her doors, to politicians. That's why she's here. She's a really good example of the community. Didn't open her door to politicians. A little suspicious of us as politicians, and therefore we need to demonstrate to her and indeed to others in the community, not only do we mean what we say, we will do what we say. Okay? And together, to use your phrase, together we will rise. Miatta Fahnbulleh, thank you so much for being a wonderful guest, and I look forward to your future success.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Maybe Abner got to say something. She's sitting there at the moment.
I'm on mute.
You're not on mute.
I am on mute. This is the host.
We can hear you well.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, you can hear me. Oh, sorry. I just wanted to say thank you for coming on. I think what you said about the girl in the school has really resonated with me, because that happened to my son a couple of years ago. So I completely understand. And I think at the moment, I'm currently trying to change the way I'm trying to put in force the way schools deal with behaviour policies in school, because at the moment in a lot of Southwark schools, parents are coming up to me and telling me their child's been racially abused, racially attacked. So I think for me, at the point of what I do in the community, I'm trying to get that moving and going forward within Southwark. So thank you. And we are going to catch up, Miatta. Yeah. So we're going to make links. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
100%.
Yeah. Miatta, enjoy your family today. I'm not sure you're out on the campaign trail like myself later today.
Have a good half term.
Thank you. Yes.
It's half term for Miatta.
Oh dear. Okay. Thank you, Miatta. Take care. We look forward to seeing you again, hopefully in a year's time. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Wow. Empress Abner, wasn't she wonderful, huh?
She's great. You can put me on mute. It says mute, mute, mute.
Is it really? Oh,
yeah.
I think we're getting some feedback from your end. That's all. That's the only reason why I did it. Okay.
No.
But
I like her.
Oh, wonderful, isn't she? Why do you like her?
I don't really like politicians, but I actually like her.
Why?
I just don't think they live up to their expectations.
Okay.
People are very good at giving bravado and saying what they don't really mean, and they don't produce it. And that's why I don't open my doors for them. And I don't think they do one aspect, they get to where they are, and then they forget about everybody else. So for me, that's why I don't really engage with them. As you know, I don't really vote. My mum's always been a Labour supporter. But for me personally, it's not something that
and that's why you're here. That's why you're here.
I'm honest.
You're honest, and you're critical. I didn't want someone who's just compliant and say yes all the time. Someone you saying to my face.
Can I say everything that I really want to say, or do I have to have it like it be reined in a bit?
It's quite all right. It's quite all right. Because I wanted that message. I wanted you to say what you're saying in public. Okay. Because I believe that Miatta and myself and other politicians from the community, okay, have a role to play to raise the confidence level that the community has in ourselves. We're judged not by our words, but by our actions, okay? That's why I always begin the show by saying this is where we translate words into action. Okay?
But I'm not seeing it in Southwark. I don't really could say that as a Southwark resident, and for families that I work with, they can honestly say they see that. You know,
Okay.
like I had a coffee afternoon last week, and you know, some people didn't turn up, and I was quite disheartened by that because a lot of my families wanted to see them, and it just made me think, like, you want these people to work with you and be for you, but you don't even turn up at an event. So how disheartening is that?
Can I just respond to that? And I think, first of all, we haven't told the audience is that I turned up to your event.
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about you though. I'm talking about
No. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. But I am an elected politician. I came along to your event, and I've met quite a number of your families, and a number of them are casework I'm still pursuing right now, as you will know. Okay, and it was extremely helpful. Very demanding, I might add, very demanding. And I suppose, if I may say this to you, we as a community have no choice. We've got to get into politics, we've got to get into public life. And as Matt has really said and articulated very well, if you're nearly half the population, it will be gross negligence if we didn't take our rightful seat around the table. It would be gross negligence. It would be gross negligence if we didn't assert ourselves in local schools and seek our positions as governorships in those schools. It would be gross negligence if the Southwark Labour Party were underrepresented by the African community, which across Southwark is nearly half the population. That would be gross negligence on our part. It would be gross negligence of us not to join the police force, okay? Because we want to make sure that those who police our communities reflect our communities. It would be gross negligence if we didn't encourage our communities to become doctors and nurses and other health professionals and leaders in the National Health Service locally. That would be gross negligence. And what we will be doing, therefore, it is setting up our children for failure.
And I understand that. But again, schools, again, are built to make us cogs in the wheels of society. We're not teaching our kids how to be financially able and stable if they can't reach the academic levels of their peers. And that is what my biggest gripe is all the time. Like, there are people who haven't got degrees and have been made who are very successful, but the education system doesn't give them skills. So I have really tried to influence from year 5 and 6 in my schools other skills, because not all my children are academic. Do you understand? And the thing is, when you don't turn up to something, families lose faith in you. Our families are already desperate. They're already losing faith in the community as a whole. And
I'm going to extend this arm to you. I'm going to extend this arm of help to you. If after this show you list to me the individuals, personalities that did not attend your function, okay, I will make personal contact with them. Okay, I attended and I reported back to others that it was a very good and useful session. Okay, and so you just tell what it is, and I will be your ambassador to ensure they come along.
I've already spoken to them, and I gave them a big earful.
I want you to be able to communicate to the community, therefore. Look, because I know you are a passionate mother, a passionate community activist, and you passionately care about the families in your schools. I've seen you at work. I've seen the dedication, the passion that you put into your work. And so, therefore, it is my duty to give you whatever support you need. Okay? So be assured, there's usually good reasons if individuals do not turn up. It's not because they don't care. There's usually good reasons. But
I'm not saying they don't care, but I'm saying to the community, it seems like they don't care, because, you know, some of my families work. So they're taking time out of work, which is putting food on their mouths in a time where money is very scarce. And not only that, everything has gone up. So we have to remember, when I advertise these things, the parents are taking time, asking me questions. They're calling me, is it still on? Is this person still coming? So it means a lot to them, and it takes a lot out of my time. I'm late to pick up my child. And I'm not saying I don't mind doing that, because my child is in good hands with his childminder. But when I make the effort, I want the same effort back. Do you understand?
And I get it.
That's why we have Black Parents Forum. That's why I go to the early keeping communities together. I go to all of these things because I care about the community, and I want my parents to know what services there are in Southwark. Southwark is a big borough. There's a lot of things going on that our parents are not aware of. And to be honest, we need to make them aware of, so they can become self-sufficient, so they don't have to. Obviously, I want them to still rely on me, but they also have the independence to do things themselves as well.
There you are. Maybe we should get some of your parents on the show. Let's talk about life in.
I could get loads of parents on the show with you. You would love all my parents. I could think of a good 10.
Okay. So there you are. That's the show itself. We get the grassroots opinions. Absolutely. This is.
Or maybe we can get them together on a Saturday morning and do a video of them all talking. Maybe we should do it like that.
Oh yeah, let's do this. Okay? Because that's the whole purpose of these shows: to engage and to inspire and to motivate actions. Okay, that's our purpose: to engage, to inspire, to motivate to action. That's the whole purpose of this. Sitting down and complaining is not good enough. It is not good enough. We can and will do better. Okay, but let's reflect upon this interview. We've got another 2 more minutes or so. Reflect upon this wonderful interview.
It shows no matter where you come from, anything is possible. Like, she's like a force to be reckoned with, because some people come here and they feel like they can't achieve anything. She's done it. Her parents came here, sacrificed. She's done it. She's a product of what can be achieved. And that's what I like. I like to hear real stories, not people who've, been given certain things and then they just. That's what I like about her. She's a mother. She's gone through hardship. She's experienced whatever she's experienced to make the position, to give her the position that she is now acquiring. So I like her. And I honestly, and when she talks, I feel like I honestly believe that she means what she says.
Absolutely.
That's what I liked about her. I honestly believe she meant what she said, so that's what.
And that's a sign, a hallmark of a true politician, someone who's able to engage and inspire people. So which goes into Parliament. Her first speech, I'm sure, will be thunderous, truly inspirational, and I'm convinced that she'll be an excellent and outstanding MP for the Camberwell and Peckham constituency. We look forward to her career path, which I'm sure is a very steep upward path. Okay, let's give her support. And of course, she is contactable, Miatta Fahnbulleh, via Facebook, YouTube, and of course. I know. I know. Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. She said as well, and of course she's got her own website, which is Miatta Fahnbulleh .org. It is. I should tell you, it is .org. Okay, Miatta Fahnbulleh .org. Okay, so I commend that website to you, and you heard her opinion in respect of the situation in Ashford, awful situation. And I want to encourage those of you who've not signed the petition, go to change.org, and the petition is there.
I just want to say, it's not about changing the head teacher, it's changing the culture of the school. So it's not just the head teacher, it's the whole culture of the school. Because if anyone's watched any of the other videos where parents have said their children have been attacked in the hallways, attacked, just in year 9 and in different year groups in that school, it's not just the head, it's the culture of the school. And like
just pause for a moment. I'm just going to say to those who listen to us via galaxyfreeway.net, I'm going to disconnect now, and Sister Shanice will follow this show. So I'll disconnect now from Galaxy Freeway. We've just gone for a few more minutes. Empress, this disconnect from Galaxy. There you
It's
are.
about the culture of the school. It's about getting parents in, retraining them, anti-racism, whatever it is. We need to get parents to come in and have these kind of conversations, hard conversations, create awareness in our schools. And I think this goes for my son's schools, the schools in Southwark. It is very important because it just doesn't happen in places like Surrey. It happens in places where they're populated with different ethnic minorities. It's about retraining people. And remember, society is not just for one person. Our society is grown on immigrants, refugees, and people need to understand that. And like I say to certain parents, if you don't like the school that your child is growing up in, I'm happy for you to move to a different school, because we're not going to leave because one person doesn't like us. You have no right to put your hand on any child because of their color, their religion, their disability, whatever it is. No one has the right to do that to anybody's child. And like I say to children, when you do certain things, from the age of 10, you become criminally responsible. So if you do certain things, the law will deal with you if the school doesn't deal with you. And our schools need to be more accountable, not to be afraid to challenge certain parents who are racist, who are prejudiced against people. We cannot allow that to happen in schools.
Absolutely
it's unacceptable because we're still presidents.
So, of course, see, you're so fired up. Oh my God!
I am, because it's happening too much, and we're just lying down and taking it. And I'm not going to stand for it.
Absolutely not. So we need to get you into public life, of course. So
public life. I don't have time for public life. I'm focusing on my 10-year-old.
Okay, all right. Nevertheless, what you are highlighting is the passion within the community. Okay, and the passion that says there must be change, a meaningful change, change that is not for the moment, but a change that lasts forever. Okay? So changing culture, you're absolutely right. And that will happen with people like yourself who are not simply lying down and taking it. Okay, with people like yourself, change is possible. And I'm very confident that the changes I've seen over time have been magnificent. But we must remain on guard. Okay, we must.
Not with violence, not with anything. We can protest, we can talk about it, we can promote it on Facebook, Instagram, things like that. People can tell their stories, but I do not want people being violent towards each other, going to people's houses, and that kind of stuff I won't tolerate, because I've seen people do that when something happens, people act in violence and, they get aggressive. And I'm saying this to me because sometimes I know I can get my emotions and they take over. My son can attest to that quite a lot. But I'm just saying, let the police deal with this family and these people. Other people should not go and do what they need to do and feel like they need to do street justice or take things into their own hands. Let the police deal with this matter and respect that girl and her family's privacy. Do not keep showing the video as well. That's something I feel quite highly about because it's quite distressing. And I've seen what the young girl looks like now. She's not eating, she's not sleeping. We need to respect her and give her boundaries to deal through this ordeal with her parents as well. So that's something
well said. So, okay, I think we've got to wrap up now.
We can. It's my weekend. It's half term. Woo!
And I want to remind both listeners and viewers, the whole purpose of these shows is to inspire and to empower. Remember, this is where we translate our words into action, and where success is ours for the taking. All righty. Oh, okay. She's so fired up today. I have to say, she's so fired up. But these words is really powerful, and I'm really pleased that you're here to share your experiences with us. But until the next strong, we remain the motivator alongside Empress Fahnbulleh. The next strong. Okay.
Bye, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Goodbye.